It's the year 1087, William the Conqueror has died, leaving his estates to his three sons, Henry, William and Robert. Their father's death triggered a three-way battle for power between ambitious brothers, with the turmoil lasting around 19 years. Let's discuss the story of Henry I and the battle with his brothers and the similarities of this to the anarchy between Matilda and Stephen. Henry I was the fourth son of William the Conqueror. On the death of William in 1087, three of those four sons remained, as Richard had died in 1070 from a hunting accident in the New Forest. Robert inherited Normandy, William Rufus, supposedly his father's favourite son, inherited the prize of England, and Henry was left with money. Robert wasn't happy with this, as he expected as the eldest son to be the main successor, but William used Norman traditions and divided the land between the sons, and it was said that on his deathbed he wanted to disinherit his eldest son, but was persuaded to divide his dominions. William Rufus had returned to England and had already been crowned king, and with this news Robert became angrier. In Cotentin in Normandy, Henry received land from Robert in exchange for £3,000 of his inheritance to fund his armies. Henry agreed, and with this exchange he was made the new Count of Cotentin. With the help of Henry's funding, Robert planned to invade England. Barons had sided with Robert to displace William, as Robert was said to be easier to manipulate. So in 1088 the barons started a rebellion, but it was a failure when Robert didn't show up to support the English rebels. He was meant to be sending some troops over from Normandy, but apparently this was abandoned due to bad weather at the Channel crossing, and the rebels surrendered. Henry grew as a leader in Cotentin and was gaining support from noblemen all over Normandy. Robert tried to cancel the initial agreement they had made, but as Henry grew stronger, it was too late. In 1088, Henry sailed to England to talk with William Rufus, asking to be given the lands of their mother, Matilda of Flanders. While there, Bishop Odo of Bayeux convinced Robert that Henry was plotting against him, and upon his return to Normandy, Henry was imprisoned and had his lands seized. At this point, Henry had gained a lot of influence over the French nobles, and Robert was pressured into freeing Henry in the spring of 1089. King William Rufus ordered several barons to take up arms against Robert, which started a battle, and in a rush of panic, Robert would ask for help from wherever he could get it. Henry arrived with help, and because of his exploits in the battle, they won. As you can see, the three brothers couldn't find common ground or be satisfied with the wealth or land that they owned, and constantly fought. In 1091, William Rufus sailed from England with a large army to force Robert to surrender, and in this he was successful at forcing Robert to sign a peace treaty at Rouen with mutual benefits. As part of this treaty they excluded Henry, and he was refused succession and land, and of course this pushed Henry to war against both brothers. Henry had gathered an army at Mont Saint-Michel, but as his brothers attacked, the support from his barons depleted and Henry was defeated fairly quickly, and he had to flee the castle and escape to France. This defeat didn't deter Henry, and once again he continued to gain followers and promised them land and castles for when he became King of England. Now maybe he couldn't rely on the barons that had dispersed under pressure from his brothers' armies, but I think at this point it's quite clear that the one thing that he could rely on, and was an absolute certainty, was his brothers fighting again and abandoning their peace treaty, and that is exactly what had happened. Upon that, William Rufus now decided to support Henry against Robert and provide the necessary funds to push Henry forward. Over the years, Henry and William grew closer and helped each other against their brother Robert. On August 2nd in the year 1100, William Rufus died unexpectedly when an arrow struck him and pierced his lung while hunting. It was ruled an accident, but it was very suspicious, and many believed otherwise. Lord Walter Tyrrell, who shot the arrow, said that the arrow bounced off an oak tree and struck the king's chest, which was quite the coincidence. Chroniclers said that Tyrrell was a good bowman and that it was unlikely it was an accident. Henry was part of the hunting party that day, and with his brother's death, Henry abandoned his body and quickly headed to Winchester to secure the royal treasury, and then went to London. According to chroniclers, such an act of God was a just end for a wicked king, and it was a fitting demise for a king that had constant conflict with the church. With his brother Robert away crusading, this was the chance Henry had been waiting for, and he was crowned King of England at Westminster Abbey within a few days. When Robert heard the news, he was of course furious, and he invaded with his army in 1101. Unfortunately for him, the invasion failed, and at that point he was forced to accept Henry as the legitimate king. Henry wasn't content with his victory against Robert, and he wanted more. With Robert clearly at a weak point, Henry invaded Normandy in 1105 with a large army and eventually defeated Robert at the Battle of Timetamps in 1106. Upon his defeat, Robert was captured and spent the rest of his life imprisoned. After this victory, Henry ruled over England and Normandy remained under control of the English for nearly 100 years. During his reign, Henry married Matilda of Scotland, and with her had 2 children, Matilda and William. While he did father many other children, Matilda and William were the only legitimate heirs to the throne. Henry's male heir, William, sadly died at sea, where a newly built ship that was named the White Ship struck a submerged rock when transporting many nobles from France to England, and capsized, killing all but one out of an approximate 300 people on board. In 1135, Henry would die. It is said that he had eaten too many lampreys, which are jawless fish and look somewhat similar to an eel, and in that period they were a delicacy among the wealthy. On his deathbed, he proclaimed Matilda as the heir to his throne, and here starts the lust for power, and as Henry once fought with his brothers for the elusive English throne, Matilda and Stephen would endure a similar fate. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed it, please like the video and subscribe to the channel for similar content, and I'll see you soon.